This is the only watch brand ranking on YouTube that you need to watch. It is 100% accurate. And again, I know you're asking why? Because it's me. No, in all seriousness, I don't know why I keep doing rankings or tier lists, because every single time I do it, I get absolutely destroyed in the comments. Maybe I hold on to the 10% that agree with me, agree with my outlandish takes, but look, there's one thing that I can guarantee if you watch and stay to the end, is that you will be entertained. So whether you're a seasoned collector or just getting into watches, this tier list will give you a completely new perspective. Now, I'm gonna take my time to go through the categories that have taken me a long time to name. I just want you guys to appreciate the time it takes to come up with these sorts of categories. Of course, right at the top, we've got the Holy Grail. These are watches that are a little bit out of reach, you know, a little bit expensive, maybe just not quite realistic for now, but you would love to have, I would love to have. And then you've got watches or brands that you would buy, so very realistic, maybe the next 5 to 10 years. Then you have solid watch brands and watches that I respect and that I think are just solid, but maybe wouldn't buy, but can't really knock. And then I've got the meh category, where maybe I don't know much about that brand or whatever, and I just haven't got much of an opinion on it. And then I've got the infamous category, which has come back with a vengeance. Poop. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So we're starting off with AP, Audemars Piguet, and to be honest, this is gonna hurt a lot of your feelings, and it just had to be the first brand that we're gonna start with, but it's not a brand that I've particularly ever warmed to. Don't get me wrong, they make amazing watches. The Royal Oak is an amazing, iconic, brilliant watch. But if I was to spend that sort of money, I don't think I would go to this particular brand. Now, is it a Holy Grail? No. Is it a would buy? As I said, no, because there's other watches in that price range for Royal Oak that I would want. And so I'll have to put AP in solid. There you go. Now, Baume & Mercier, I couldn't tell you much about, so I'm gonna put that in meh. Blancpain. One of my favorite diver watches, the 50 Fathoms. You know I'm a huge fan of that watch, especially the new 38mm that came out recently. However, it's not a would buy because their watches are extremely expensive. You're talking about sort of 16 to 18,000 pounds for a steel diver's watch. Now, don't get me wrong, brilliant watches. Are they worth that much money? I am not sure. I've always wanted the 50 Fathoms. You know, those who watch the channel know I've got the Swatch Blancpain collaboration, Ocean of Storms. I'm going to put that in the Holy Grail, because I would love to own a 50 Fathoms one day. Now we've got Breguet, and I'm a huge fan of their dress watches, as many of us are. Again, very expensive. The subscription, 2024, 2025, with the watch I'm talking about is the one with the one hand. I think is absolutely beautiful, timeless, unique. Everything you want in a dress watch, I think, understated as well. And so I would put Breguet actually in Holy Grail. I could see myself one day owning one. Now we've got Breitling, and for those that don't know, I own the 1965 Breitling Top Time Reference 2002, the watch, the Bond watch that was actually featured in the film Thunderball. So I have to put it in would buy, because that's exactly what I did. One of my favorite grails, well, I say grails, one of my favorite vintage watches that I just had to buy, and had the great opportunity to buy that watch, so I pulled the trigger. Now we've got Bulgari, which is an interesting one because they've got the Octo Finissimo, whatever it is, the thinnest watch, and as much as that is very impressive from a watchmaking standpoint, the watch is ugly, and I've never really liked any of their watches, if I'm going to be completely honest. And so maybe this is the first controversial one. I'm going to put it in poop. You know, you can make the thinnest watch in the world, but if it's ugly, then what's the point? I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh. I don't know. We've got Cartier next. Now, I am a Cartier fan. I'm a fan of the Tank. I'm a fan of the Santos. Santos 100 is the particular watch that I'm a huge fan of. I don't know why. Some people hate that watch because it's a bit large, a bit more industrial, a bit more sort of, dare I say, manly. I don't know. Would I buy? At one point, it would have been a definite would buy, but recently I've kind of, I don't know, drifted away from Cartier. But I'd like to think at one point I'd own a Cartier watch. As I said, The Santos 100 for me, it's got an automatic movement. It's just a nice looking Santos. And yeah, maybe I will buy that one day. Who knows? We've got a classic now. Casio. Do I put it in Holy Grail or do I put it in Woodbuy? Let's put it in Woodbuy. It's not a Holy Grail, but it's definitely a brilliant brand with brilliant watches, everyday watches, classic watches that will, I think, stand the test of time. I think this will be a brand that forever will be loved, and rightly so. We move on to Chopard, and Chopard's a brand which really has never piqued my interest. They make good looking watches, but have I ever thought, I really want that Chopard watch? I don't think I've ever said that, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone else say that as well, which is why I've got to put it in meh. I don't think it deserves to be in poop because, as I said, they do make good watches. However, nothing that really interests me. Now, Citizen, I've got to put it in solid because they've got great value propositions. The Citizen Ciosa, so many great watches. I like vintage Citizens as well, and I think it's a brand that I think is dearly loved in the watch community, and rightly so. We're moving on to FP Journe. Now, this, without really me thinking, will go into Holy Grail. I love the Elegant. There's so many different variations of that Elegant that I really like. Color combination is what I mean, but also their dress watches are beautiful. The Havana in particular is a beautiful watch, very expensive, and I would like to think one day I would get one at retail, but I've heard they're very difficult to get. If you think a Rolex is difficult to get, then yeah, good luck getting a FP Journe. Frank Muller. Now, I'm not going to hold back here because I think their watches are absolutely disgusting. I mean, I've never warmed to any of their designs. They're just really odd. And I know at one point they were in fashion almost. I don't know. There was a bit of a trend with them from my understanding. But again, I don't really hear many people talking about Frank Muller. And I think it's because their watches are ugly. So in poop you go. Frederic Constant. Now, this is a brand I've mentioned because I talk about how they're offering great value propositions, classic designs, but they lack that unique DNA with their designs. And so as much as I want to put them in solid, I would put them in meh because I feel like they need a watch that sort of shouts or shows what their brand is all about. And I think that's what they're lacking right now. They're playing it a little bit too safe. Maybe it's working, maybe it's not. I'm not sure how their sales are. But one thing I do know is that they do make some great looking watches for pretty good prices as well. Glashütte Original, I've got to put it in solid. Would I buy it? I've never again thought, I really want a Glashütte Original, but they make great watches. GP now, Gerard Perregaux. So this is an interesting one because I'm a huge fan of the Laureato. I think there's some great color variations that watch comes in. But other than that watch, I couldn't really give you another watch that they have in their catalog. And so therefore, I don't think they deserve to be in solid. I think they deserve to be in meh. I think if there's only one watch that you're interested in, and it seems to be the Laureato is probably their most popular watch. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, that is the case. I think a meh is deserved. Grand Seiko. Now, Grand Seiko, I have a soft spot. I have a special place in my heart for Grand Seiko. Where do I start? Beautiful dials, beautiful cases, not too expensive. You can go into a boutique and buy the watch that you want. But the one that I want that may catch you out is the mini snowflake. And so that's not the automatic version. That is actually the quartz version at 37 millimeters. You still get that beautiful textured snowflake dial, which is stunning. You get the tempered blue hands as well. I think this is a great option for a daily watch, and I'm kicking myself now because I just made a video about everyday watches and I didn't bloody put this one in. I think I've got to put Grand Seiko into Woodbuy. Moser, pretty standard designs, I mean simplistic designs, but I have to put it in solid because I haven't seen a Moser that I've thought I wouldn't want that, but at the same time, I probably because of the price, I would have never considered them, but I've put them in solid for now. Hamilton, Woodbuy. The khaki field is great. However, the new watch they've recently released with the power reserve, not a huge fan. Dial looks a little bit cluttered, but then again, I would probably go out and buy a Hamilton of some sort. Hublot, I don't really want to talk too much about Hublot. I've put them in poop without even saying I put them in poop. Many of you probably would have thought I would have done that. I think the way they work with different materials is very impressive, but due to the fact they have off-the-shelf movements and charge an absolute bomb for their watches. I just can't get behind them at the moment, and I would love to be won over by them at some point. And I would love for the narrative to change, because that would be the biggest underdog story, right? If everybody just started loving Hublot again. But anyway, we're moving on to IWC, which is a brand that I really like. A newfound appreciation. I was invited to the flagship store to get hands-on with their watches, and honestly, I was blown away by them, particularly the Ingenieur range and the Mark 20. A great everyday watch that I didn't have appreciation for, but spending time with that watch, I do have a newfound appreciation for it. I'll put would buy. I think it's a matter of time before I pull the trigger with an IWC, whether it's an Ingenieur or whether it's a Mark 20 or an automatic Spitfire, by the way, which I think is a great watch. JLC, I'm not going to attempt to say this because I got ripped for attempting to pronounce this. JLC. I love the reverse. I love the ultra thin moon phase. When it comes to dress watches, absolutely brilliant. Don't like their sports watches, I have to say. I've commented on that in the past. Not a huge fan of the Polaris. And so I have to put them in solid. You know, they're the watchmaker's watchmaker, and, you know, respect where respect is due. However, I do want to see Jaeger-LeCoultre get to where they deserve to be, which is right at the top with Patek and Vacheron and Rolex. I mean, their watchmaking, arguably, you guys will probably tell me in the comments, are actually better than Rolex, and I probably would agree. A Lange & Söhne, you know that my grail dress watch is the Lange one, so a Lange & Söhne goes straight into the Holy Grail category. Longines, would buy. Zulu Time GMT, the black to grey bezel, even the green bezel. Great watches, great value propositions. I really like the direction Longines is going in. Now, Nomos is a brand I haven't been hands-on with any of their watches, but this year, Watches and Wonders with their world timers, that really piqued my interest. Really cool colors. I just wish there weren't limited editions. I love the fact that their in-house movements and everything's done in-house, and they really shout about that. I really appreciate, you know, those brands that go the extra mile, but still don't charge you an arm and a leg for those in-house movements and you know, the build quality. So Nomos, I'll have to go for solid. I'd love to get hands-on with Nomos watches in the future. Oris, I used to think about Oris as I was contemplating a bronze version of the Big Date, I think it's called. Didn't pull the trigger. I've kind of lost interest in Oris, weirdly, and so that's why I've put it in meh. Panerai, the watches are far too big. I don't think I would ever consider buying a Panerai, but I understand the, I guess, appeal that you may have to Panerai. Just not for me. Piaget, solid, some really great vintage dress watches, and I do like some of their new dress watches. And Patek just flies into Holy Grail because the Aquanaut for me is one of those watches I would love to own one day. Casual luxury at its finest. Richard Mille, some of the ugliest watches out there. It's a trend. It's just, for me, I really don't like Richard Mille. I guess it doesn't really matter that I don't like it because I could never afford one. But the point is, even if I could afford one, I don't think I would ever buy one. Put it that way. Rolex, is it a grail? No. Would I buy? Yes. You know that I am very, very much in the market for a Rolex Explorer. I'm on a journey to decide which Rolex Explorer to buy. So any advice in the comments would be great. Seiko, would buy. Solid watches. Seiko 5, the Turtle, great watches. Love them. Zin, I haven't really come across many or been hands-on with many Zin watches, and so I've heard good things about them, but I'm going to put it in meh for now because, as I said, don't really appeal to me. They're in a price point which is really weird. You know, I'd rather just go out and get, you know, a Longines or a Tudor. I would never think about going for a Zin. That's just me. Maybe I just haven't been exposed to that brand enough. Tag Heuer, after the recent release of the Formula One, I would have put it in solid if they had charged the right amount of money for that new Formula One range, but it's poop for me. I think nothing that Tag is doing at the moment is exciting me. As I said, that Formula One range, you know, the nostalgia that created with the 80s and 90s, it was a watch that I was really tempted to buy, but they really missed a trick with that release, in my opinion. Tissot, again, meh. Never really been interested in Tissot, and that might annoy a lot of PRX fanboys. But for me, the PRX, the reason why I am just not interested is because you see it everywhere. I think a watch you see everywhere, you don't, for me, I just don't really want. And I know you might be thinking, hang on a minute, so many people have Rolex Explorers. It's just not the same level, is it? It's just not the same level. Now, Tudor, I would buy. The Tudor Ranger, I'm a huge fan of. The Black Bay. So many of the Tudor watches, actually. I love the chronograph. The North Flag, I've talked about many times before as well. I love Tudor. I really think they're a great brand, and I would like to think I would buy one eventually. Now we've got Vacheron Constantin, and I would put Vacheron in solid, which is kind of crazy. And the reason I put it in solid is because I wouldn't buy it because I can't afford one right now. But none of their watches have ever been a grail for me. You know, like how FP Journe, I've talked about the Elegant, I've talked about the Aquanaut with the Patek, I've talked about the Lange 1. There's nothing in the Vacheron range that I've thought I would love to have that one day. However, if I had the money, I probably would peruse their catalogue a little bit more, but maybe it's just because I know there's no point looking at what Vacheron has to offer because it's in a completely different ball game entirely. Now, Zenith is a brand which annoys me a little bit because some of their releases, yeah, us watch enthusiasts, especially at Watches and Wonders, you know, blue ceramic, it's something to shout about, it's something to get excited about. But none of their offerings for me are realistic, and I really think they're doing nothing really for the normal consumer like you and me. I don't know where they're trying to position themselves, but nothing that they're doing right now is exciting me, and I would love to be proven wrong in the future regarding Zenith. Now, I've just realized we've got a couple of brands that we've already done, but one we haven't talked about is Omega, and you know my favorite watch is the No Time to Die Seamaster. I have two Seamasters, 1994 Piers Brosnan Seamaster, which is beautiful as well, so of course I would put that in would buy. Just checking the list here now, and weirdly there's Christopher Ward. None of the other micro brands are in here, but I've got to say something about Christopher Ward because I've been hands-on with some of their watches now, and the one in particular is the C65 Sandhurst. They've recently sent out the Vader bracelet, I think it is, and that has transformed that watch for me. I've been wearing that watch to work, and it is the perfect proportions. I've fallen in love with that watch. That watch is getting more time on my wrist than the other watches. Maybe it's because I know I have to give it back eventually, but that is a brilliant watch. And I think weirdly, Christopher Ward's most boring watch has become my favorite Christopher Ward watch. So I have to put Christopher Ward in would buy. I would buy that watch, and maybe I will buy that watch, but that means I don't get the Rolex Explorer. Anyway, big decisions have to be made, but there you have it. This is the most accurate watch ranking you will ever see on YouTube, and if you disagree, you are wrong, not me. 10% of you in the comments, I should say, that are backing me, you guys are right. We are right, and everyone else is wrong. But no, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have, please do like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. I've been Jag from Jags Watches, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.